I'm standing here on top of a levee inside what could be the latest mega complex of some sort in Maryland Heights. According to Maryland Heights, Stan Kroenke and other developers want to build on this irreplaceable floodplain. And yes, they want your tax dollars to help them do it. You heard that right. The man who just moved the Rams to LA is going to ask for taxpayer subsidies to develop 1,800 acres of floodplain just a few months after devastating floods hurt our region. And the Maryland Heights City Council seems perfectly fine with this. Some of the most devastating floods St. Louis has ever experienced came up rapidly over the holidays at the end of 2015. Our region experienced flooding in places that had never before experienced floods. According to Washington University professor Bob Criss, much of the damage from these floods was man-made and predictable.
Floodplain development is making flooding worse in our region. It's preventing floodwaters from spreading out in the floodplains where they belong when the water is high, and it also puts more infrastructure in harm's way.
Perhaps the city should talk to some of the victims of the holiday floods first.
We were almost 4.5 feet above any previous flood record before. As you can see, our building here, when we built this building, it's actually 3.5 feet above the 100-year flood mark, and it still had 22 inches of water in it. In spite of the fact that it was elevated above the known floodplain and all that kind of thing. Everything basically that you see here, we own about 140 acres here. There wasn't anything that wasn't underwater except our home, which is up on top of which is about 30 feet above everything else above the hill. At the highest point on one of our fields, we had 27 foot of water on top of the field.
Those names, 100-year levee, 500-year levee, those are con games. First of all, we don't even hardly know what a 100-year or a 500-year flood is. Those flood levels have been grossly underestimated by, as I said, at least 5 feet in this particular region.
The choice is yours, Maryland Heights. Asphalt or habitat, flooding or conservation. You may not experience the floods here in Maryland Heights. You may move them somewhere else along the river. But if you're at all concerned about what's good for our region, the choice should be clear. The St. Louis area does not need this floodplain development. For the Great Rivers Habitat Alliance, I'm David Stokes.